Hello students, I'm Angelat, and I'll be teaching the upcoming Working with Spatial Data workshop at Stamen Design Studio on June 26th. In this video, I want to give a quick overview of what you can expect to learn in the workshop, as well as how you can expect to learn it. We'll go through the course materials really quickly, and also touch on some of the technologies and tools we'll be introducing, and even look at a couple of the examples so you can get a sense before we dive in what we'll be doing for those 4 hours. They are going to be an action-packed 4 hours, planning to do a lot of hands-on so that you can get first-hand experience with the tools we'll be covering. I'll talk about those tools in a second, but I just want to look at the structure of the course. We're going to start with the data, where you always have to start with data visualization. So we're going to get an intuitive sense of GeoJSON, how it works, how you can work with it, some useful tricks if you're not used to it. If you've played with some GeoJSON, we'll be looking at how to use it with those tools. So before I get into those again, let's just look down here. We're going to go over two mapping frameworks, Leaflet and Mapbox. We'll look at when you might want to use either one, and how you can use some of their advanced functionalities. We're going to spend a lot of time on D3. That's my favorite tool to work with in general, and I think we know there's a lot of exciting things you can do with it. We're going to cover projections, so you have the fundamentals of that down, and also rendering with D3, because that's sort of the powerful and the tricky thing to learn. So we have plenty of exercises there that you can play with throughout the day as well as after we're done. And then we're going to look at some performance issues, as in how we can make our visualizations run faster or load quicker. There's a few tools like TopoJSON which we can look into, as well as the way we render with Canvas. I'm also really excited to cover this turf.js library. It's not so much a visualization tool as a general spatial analysis library, but it's just got so many awesome features, and they're really straightforward to use. As soon as I learned about it, I got addicted, and I really want to share that with more people. I think it enables a lot of interesting things that maybe we would have thought were too difficult to implement ourselves, or involves a lot of heavy math under the hood that we don't even have to worry about to get some powerful stuff. And I also have a collection of more advanced techniques, and I'll show you. There's actually thousands of D3 examples that do interesting things. So we'll see if we have time to get into those, or people taking the workshop, if you want to let me know if there's a particular one that you want to spend time on. I'm happy to delve deeper. We are doing this with a pretty small group, trying to keep it that way so everyone gets focused time. And we'll be able to accommodate sort of these special requests. Let's take a brief look at each of the tools, just so you have a sense of what you'll be walking away with. So Leaflet is an open source JavaScript library for making online maps, kind of like rolling your own Google Maps in a way. They have a lot of customizations you can do, really nice community tutorials, documentation. And another great thing is the amount of plugins that have been written for Leaflet, since it's been around for a little bit, has a strong community. We're just going to cover the basics so that you kind of know how to get started with Leaflet. It's probably one of the easier ways to visualize spatial data just straight out of the box anyway. So we want to get you started with that so you have some context. We're also going to touch on Mapbox.gl, which is kind of the new and improved Leaflet. It uses WebGL under the hood, which means that you can get this really smooth zooming, really fancy kind of interactions, and but in principle, it's very similar to Leaflet in terms of the functionality it provides. It's kind of like a more high-tech. It's also open source, but it's powered by Mapbox, which is an amazing company that does a lot of cool mapping stuff. So again, we're going to kind of cover the basics of using it and give you some jump-off points if you want to use it more deeply. But a lot of the focus of this is really customizing with D3. And so, of course, there's a ton of D3 mapping examples out there. We'll look at some more in a second. But this is, I think, one of the main draws of the workshop is really being able to use D3 and being able to use D3 in conjunction with Leaflet or Mapbox, which is something we'll touch on. I mentioned Turf.js, advanced geospatial analysis for browsers. Really interesting APIs. It's a really consistent API, which is nice. So like pretty much everything, and it's really well documented too. But anything you want to do works pretty much the same way. And like you give it some GeoJSON and it either changes it somehow, or it calculates something for you, or combines things for you. But so just I think a quick introduction to this will be a really valuable addition to your tool belt, so that when you come across some problem, you're like, I really want to be able to do, to intersect or union some shapes. You know where you can go and quickly be able to do that. So bringing it back to D3, this is a blog post I wrote not too long ago, which catalogs a lot of the interesting ways that people use D3 to make maps that kind of break the mold from the traditional Google Maps kind of slippy map where you can pan and zoom around. Of course, you can still pan and zoom with a lot of D3 maps, but this blog post has each of these are examples that you can click into of really beautiful, interesting, interactive visualizations that have a geospatial component. There's really crazy, also cool things you can do, like transitioning between projections, transitioning from a traditional map into something like a cartogram, or even different representations to highlight different ways of viewing your data. There's also things that aren't even practical, but just kind of fun to do. So yeah, this post kind of is one of me trying to express why I'm so enamored with D3 and why I use it a lot, and how powerful it can be when you see sort of all the creative applications people have used D3 for. So feel free to dig deeper and click around in here. But the idea with the workshop is that we will definitely not have time to implement every single one of these techniques, but you should walk away with the techniques that if you were to study one of these examples, or this is a library that's sort of built on D3, you should have the fundamental understanding of how the pieces fit together, that you could study these and use them to make your own tennis ball globes or whatever else you want to make. So, just to kind of reiterate how many examples and cool things people have made, here's a search for the D3 geo.path API function, and there's 1,700 examples of really, some are just techniques that you can kind of study and they're standalone, some are really interesting maps, all kinds of stuff. So really, like the sky's the limit for the potential here. You can keep clicking, loading more, and trying stuff out. Bringing it back to how we'll cover all this stuff in the workshop, you saw in the repository we have this is kind of like what we'll follow throughout the day. We'll go through Leaflet, Mapbox, all this stuff. Each one of these links to a GitHub issue, which I've labeled with the act that they're part of, and so you can see that we have plenty to cover. I don't think we'll be able to even go as deep as we'd love to in every single one of these, but I think by having these here well structured and kind of well paced, I had a great time with a group of friends this past week practicing to make sure things made sense, in the order that they go. So I think we have a pretty good progression here from kind of getting started quickly and understanding the fundamentals, and then getting into the more interesting, powerful custom stuff, and then sort of ending with things that may be pretty advanced, or maybe a little bit optional if you want to focus more on combining these tools, or you want to go deeper on animations with D3, or whatever it is. We'll be able to play with that stuff at the end of the day. So this is an example of just one of these issues. If you click here, this is the one on rendering with D3 projections. We'll probably spend a good bit of time both from this starting point. There's always, in each of these I have an example starting block in Block Builder. So Block Builder is a tool for editing and sharing code snippets, D3 blocks, if you're not familiar with, that the community uses to share examples and understand each other's work. So we'll start with usually some simple code, loading some of the data that's been prepared for the workshop, and then we'll have challenges like trying to switch out different projections or bringing our data in to another existing example and see some of the more how the basic pieces fit into more complex environments. And I generally have references and resources you can use to dig deeper on any of these topics. So finally, all these examples I've been working on for the blocks I've made for these are on my GitHub blocks page, where you could click around if you prefer this sort of visual index. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun hands-on experience. We have a small group, so we'll have time to address people's individual questions. I'm really excited to have Shirley Wu TA and sort of help answer a lot of the technical things if people get stuck and don't want to necessarily hold up progress. We'll have a lot of individual attention, and yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this workshop. If you're watching this video and you didn't get to sign up, hopefully we'll be offering it again, and feel free to play around with the examples and guide yourself. I think, for me, I'm really excited about the experience of going through these in person and seeing, what people, where the dots are that people need to connect to make things fit together for them, and, really push people's skills forward. So yeah, it's going to be a good day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there. All right, thanks.